Are you curious about the first steps to starting a nonprofit organization? I'm going to walk through those steps today. Let's get into it. Hey y'all, my name is Tiffany. I am with Boss on a Budget. I help new and small nonprofits get up and running. If you need help, make sure you subscribe because I drop videos every single week. So I wanted to take a little bit of time and really talk through the beginning phases of when you're trying to start a nonprofit organization. Now, I have a few videos that walk through the actual process of getting started, like this video, which talks about how to start a nonprofit organization, and then this other video, which talks about how to start a nonprofit for the homeless population. But I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about the beginning part of the process when you're formulating your idea, and I wanted to give you some pointers to figure out how to best approach it so you're starting off with the right foundation. So in this video, I'm going to give you 4 pointers for refining your idea before you start your nonprofit organization, before you start putting yourself out there and recruiting people to join you on your team. And these 4 ideas are actually included in a workbook that I put together for people who need help fleshing out their idea. So I did link that workbook below in the description box if you need help writing out your ideas and coming up with a solid plan to start your nonprofit. Also, don't forget to watch all the way to the end of this video because I share one question that I love to ask people when I'm trying to formulate an idea and start a new project. There's one question I always ask people to get great information to be able to formulate my ideas better. So I'm going to give you 4 pointers to figure out how to formulate your nonprofit idea. And these are, again, the first steps before starting a nonprofit organization, before you start filling out paperwork and recruiting people. This is to help you get clear on what it is you actually want to do. So the first thing I suggest you do is identify what the problem is you're trying to solve. So ideally, if you're creating an organization, it's because you've seen an issue that needs to be addressed. And for some reason, other organizations aren't addressing it or they're not doing it very well, and it's largely being ignored in your community. So I do suggest that you don't start an organization just because you want to, but you do it because there's a need. There's an indication that something's not being addressed, right? So the first thing you do, like I said, is to identify what is the issue, right? And I try to tell people, don't focus on the activity. So many people start there. They say, well, I want to do a coat drive, or I want to provide food and shelter for people. But there's an underlying problem that's causing the need for the food and the shelter. So I really recommend you dig deeper and ask yourself, why in particular is there a need for a community organization to provide food? Maybe there's a population that's struggling with employment or struggling with being able to get affordable housing, right? And so because they spend so much money on housing and shelter, they don't have food that they can afford to feed their children. Or maybe there's food in the community, but it's not healthy food, right? So there are so many different angles you can take, and until you really get clear on what the main issue you're trying to address, it's going to feel a little murky. Now, what I am going to say is sometimes you start out with an idea and you only have a general idea because you're still not sure what you want to do, but throughout the process, you begin to refine it as more people help you with the marketing and the communications of it all. It will be refined along the way. So don't feel like you have to have it perfect right off the bat, but do have some general sense of what the main issue is and try to go broader and deeper than I want to do this particular activity. The second thing I suggest you do is to get clear on the particular people that you want to serve, right? So there could be a problem in your community, but it's a problem that impacts many different subgroups or sub-communities. So the issue of having healthy food could be an issue for kids, it could be an issue for mothers, it could be an issue for older adults, it could be an issue for the elderly, it could be an issue for people with certain diseases. And as I named all those different populations, you can probably imagine in your mind how your services might look different based on all those different populations. So for example, you're going to serve kids a lot differently than you may serve mothers or than you may serve people who have certain diseases. You may take a different angle or go about it a different way or serve them a different way based on their individual needs. So the issue for kids may be their parents may not have access to healthy food options, but the issue for people who are dealing with a disease may be they're not well enough to fix their own food and they need someone to come in and actually fix their food. So it really is important for you to get clear on, well, who is the population that I'm serving. And by identifying the population that you're serving, it goes back to what I just said in identifying the problem. There are specific problems for specific populations, and the more clear you are on that, the better it is for you to formulate what the heck you're going to be doing. Because a lot of people just start out with saying, I want to help somebody, I want to have a program, and then they have no idea what to do after that. Or they start so broad, they start doing everything for everyone, and they get overwhelmed, and it's really difficult to get your footing, and it's really difficult to get other people to understand who you are, what you do. You don't have a clear identity. So that's why I'm saying in the early phases and the first steps to start your nonprofit, like I said before, identify the problem, and the second piece is to identify the target population. I also recommend, once you identify who your target population is, you talk to a few people who are similar to that target population or who would be in your client base that you would be serving, right? So your potential participants. I really recommend you do this. It's not hard. People are always willing to share their experiences, and it's worth it. It's worth it to hear directly from people, to hear what they need and what they feel like the solutions are for the issues that they're facing. So get 3 to 5 people, ask them a couple of questions, really identify what their major issues are, what the barriers are that really get to the point of it all, that, really track back to why there's an issue, and get their advice on what they believe they need, what they believe the solution is, because they probably can come up with solutions and ideas that will be way better than anyone else. So don't forget to actually talk to the people who you would be serving, because they are the experts in what they need. My third suggestion is for you to do a pretty comprehensive scan in your area. This is called a needs assessment in some spaces. But I like to keep things simple, and I just say do a scan. And as a part of that scan, do your research. So look up research articles, look up data on the issue that you're trying to address, look up data and research on your particular target population and what is research. Figure out what research says about the issue and about that target population. Figure out what available data are that speak to their specific experiences related to the problem. I also suggest you look at research to see what does research and data suggest are the issues or are the solutions to the problem that you're trying to address. So for example, if you know that people with certain diseases don't have access to food, maybe there's been some studies that have shown that when they have a caretaker come in twice a day to prepare their foods, they're healthier and they're able to deal with their illness or just be better off emotionally as a result of that support. So maybe there's a study that says that that's what works. So when you're trying to design your program, you know that part of your program will probably include someone coming in to actually prepare food for them. So I suggest you do stuff like this because you don't want to ever go into a situation assuming you know everything, assuming you know what the issues are. You should really do your research to see what the people who need the services, what they're saying, what research is saying. And also what I suggest you do is look at other organizations that are serving similar populations or doing similar work as you, because they have experience doing that work, and they may be able to help you avoid some of the traps or avoid some of the mistakes of providing services that they've already worked through. They already may have processes or things in place that would make your life easier just by studying how they approach their work. So the other piece of doing this scan or this needs assessment is to identify other organizations in your local area that are serving similar populations or doing similar work as you want to do, and identifying what's working well. What are they doing well? What are their processes? How do they finance those things? But also identifying what's not working well. What are the gaps? What's missing? And you're going to write all this data down and pull it all together to help you formulate a better idea and a better solution so you can figure out the best program possible for the people you're trying to serve. And then the last thing I suggest you do is to identify your unique factor. What makes you different? What makes you special? So I'm sure you have probably heard by now that there are too many nonprofit organizations out there. I don't necessarily believe that, but I do believe that there are too many people who are starting nonprofit organizations without doing the real work to identify, is that really the right solution, right? So if you are going to put yourself out there and start a nonprofit, then you need to make sure when you do put yourself out there that you know what your unique factor is. What makes you different as an organization? What are you going to be the best at? What are you going to be the first at, right? What's going to distinguish you from all the other people or all the other organizations that are doing similar work? And so you have a one up because you would have already done your scan, as I suggested. You would have already looked at other organizations. You would have talked to people who would receive the services to get a better idea of what's missing and what's really needed. So that unique factor is not hard to identify once you do your research and once you do the work. So I really suggest you take time to figure out what is going to be different and unique about the way we do our work. Is it something in terms of your values, how you approach the work, your customer service, the type of population that you serve, the type of program model you use? Whatever it is, get very clear on what it is so you can use that as a communications and a marketing angle, and also to help get funding so people can see that you're different and get excited about the work that you're going to do. So I promise to share a question that I like to use when I'm interviewing people who are participants or potential participants, so I can get a better sense of what their needs are and a better sense of how to design a good program. So one question that I love asking is what we call in my field the magic wand question. And this question really just asks, if you had a magic wand and you could change anything about this particular issue, what would you change? So when you ask people questions like that, it allows them to dream, it allows them to think big, and actually provides some context. It provides some great suggestions that you otherwise may not have gotten if people are kind of closed in within their boxes and thinking, oh, it could work, but that would never ever happen. But when you allow people the time to dream and to really think big and come up with great suggestions, you can really come up with some great ideas. An alternative to this is if you had $1 million, or if there's one thing you could change, no matter the cost, what would you change? So those are variations of the kind of questions that can get really, really great ideas when you're talking to people and you're designing your program. So again, I suggest that before you take the steps to starting a nonprofit, before you go down the road of starting your paperwork, get really clear on who you are, and this will help you figure out your identity. So when you start forming things, when you start bringing people to the table, everyone has a clearer sense of the purpose of the organization, and you all can be more on one accord and move forward together. So I really recommend you do this preparatory work before you start engaging other people, okay? If you need help fleshing out these ideas, I do have a workbook that helps you develop your nonprofit idea. Again, it's linked below in the description box for you to be able to purchase. And also, if you know what you're going to do, you know you're going to start a nonprofit, again, don't forget to check out my video on how to start a nonprofit, which walks through step by step everything you need to do to get started. Thank you so much for watching. If you have questions or if you need help from me, visit me at www.bossonabudget.com, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.